Marvin Sapp had a whole bunch of black people kicking his back in because he asked for his church to give him 40,000, 20,000 in the building and 20,000 online. Because 1,000 of y'all watching, y'all should be able to give me this money. Let me show the video.
And they understand the cost that is involved. There's 1,000 of you. I said close them doors. Ushers, close the doors. Close the doors. Close the doors. We all gonna leave together. Y'all ain't going no place but to the restaurant. There's 1,000 of you tonight, and those that are watching, it's 1,000 that's watching online. This is a small seed. If I get 1,000 online to give this, if I get 1,000 in the sanctuary to give this, that's $40,000 tonight. I'm challenging each of you all down here to give a $20 seed.
Now, this whole debate came when it comes to tithes. What the church today describes as tithes is not actually in the Bible. It's not actually in there. People didn't give money to the church. They gave it to they gave it to the preachers because these were people that dedicated their lives to the church, which means they didn't work. They was in the church. So you donated food and clothes and stuff to them so that they could have a way to live. So you're not Marvin Sapp, for what we know, is pretty well off. I'm not saying as a person who's well off, and if you pass that until you run a church, that you should not expect donations from your congregation. It's just the point of when you have to ask for a certain number, just to ask for it. If you were fundraising for a particular thing, like, hey, we need this, so we need this money. Here's a drive that we're doing. You're supposed to have a certain level of participation within it. This came off kind of rude. He says typical black church scamming off that 501c3. Got to get their money, no taxes. Marvin's a Mason, I think, because I saw a photo of him doing the hidden hand ritual. And did you see where Ricky Smiley is coming to his defense? Another frat brother and or secret society agent. You're not allowed to say that no more, Regina. The sorority and fraternity brothers are turning into, the tiny hats. Any critique of them is going against blackness. If you point out anything that these people are doing, they'll now tell you, hey, most of the quote unquote black leaders came from frats or sororities. Now you can't critique us for nothing. So it is what it is. Talented tent. Anonymous says, I think if they can't get him for Nipsey or the basketball player murder, they're going to use him to misappropriating the grant for gang activities. Yeah, big you up out of here. I'm not hoping anything against an innocent person. I don't know if he's guilty or not. But as far as Big U, I don't think. Yeah, I think I think you're up out of here. Once the feds finally tell you they're investigating you, it's because they're done. they're kind of done. It's just time to tie the bow up at that point. Honorable says dry begging. Honorable, I hate a dry beggar. Keeper says the money is supposed to go to the community. 100%. I got a story with my grandmother. There was a point in time when my grandmother was going to this particular church, and she used to every Sunday she gave money. Every Sunday dedicated, she gave money every time she had a chance. And there was a point where a little hardship came, and when you would think the point of giving that money is so that when people need it in the community, they have somewhere to go to get help. But when she went to these people, it wasn't there. That help didn't come. And so it became a situation where, what's the point? That y'all not properly doing what you're supposed to do with this money, but you expect us to give it to you every week. We're supposed to support the church and help build it up, but people don't do the right thing. And now you get people that go to church and don't give nothing. As Pastor W say, keep that purse between the man's legs. And I say that because you have to make sure that money don't get spent. No. At some point when you ain't got it, hey, Most High will understand. Adam says, I want to see black preacher challenge men to show up and fill those seats. Him begging like this is beyond shameful. Well, unfortunately, nowadays the church ain't really for black men. Those ain't the people that give the money. It's the women. Which is why if you listen to a lot of these pastors, you listen to their sermons and listen to how they speak, you can tell their message is really towards the women. It ain't towards the entire congregation. It's not meant for everybody. It's targeted because those are the people that go in their purse and hand them the money. You know, that men call it just because you said some nice words. He needs to see you doing certain things. Virginia says some of the churches are real PPPs, prosperity pimping preachers, no loans. Obviously, he guilty. He said, yeah, he big you up out of here. All right, let me finish playing a little bit more of this.
I used to think $20 was a lot of money. $20, believe it or not, when my late wife, Melinda P. Sapp, was alive, was a good date. I could take her to the movies, buy a box of popcorn, get 1 soda, 2 straws.
That's the truth, though.
I wasn't cheap. That's swag. I was looking in her eyes. She's looking in mine. Can't do that no more. Now, everyone up here, we've all sold and seeded, but I need everyone standing up here with me, to plant a seed of $100. Because again, it costs to sit up here. I got you.
Now, that part I can respect. That part I can respect. To him saying that the people on this stage, you got to offer more. Now, I hate to say it this way, but if there's some hope in the future, things going on with this church, but it would be crazy if the people on stage know what he's doing. So back in, they're gonna get more back. But I ain't want to put that out there. Hopefully, it's not what's going on. Honorable says there are reports that the black churches bring in $19 billion as a collective annually, and yet the men of those churches never think to come together or offer self-defense training to the women. That's not their goal. That's the point I'm making. I'm going to talk about this even further with the critique of the black church and how the reason why it falls on deaf ears is because of black American culture. It's going to be hard to... we can make an argument that the root of 80% of the problems in our community comes from the church. And that the only way you can fix it is if you either, now I don't really agree with this, completely separate from that identity completely, or you have to fix it. And it's going to be hard to fix something that you got people, as Regina says, it's just pimp. They get all their game from them. If you ever listen to an actual pimp talk, not these new age dudes that just, beat on women, that a pimp normally is, I hate to be fair to say this, a lot of pimps, at least back then, had a level of intelligence. They sound like pastors. You could not be religious at all. You could not follow religion at all, the Bible, not believe in it. But when a good pastor gives a great sermon, everybody can feel it. I always go back to Pastor Darby's Dry Bones sermon. If you look it up, I'm pretty sure y'all know it. That Dry Bones it was a great sermon because it wasn't just about the Bible or spirituality. It was a great message. That's what great pastors do. They're able to turn something for not just being religious, holy in the thou type stuff, and really make it a good message to have people want to better themselves or look at things from a certain perspective. Virginia says it's hard out here for a pimp. Had he not tell the ushers to close the doors, this would have been just another day night at church. Well, I'm going to read his response to why he did that. Honorable says, they don't need money. They're not reporting real numbers, and it still comes up at $19 billion. Well, it's pimping, Honorable.
Let's see. So put your 20 away, preachers. That 20 wasn't for you. And this is what I need you to do. If you're giving electronically or even if you're giving tangibly, I'm going to have y'all come to the altar and give it because I need to see 1,000 people moving.
So y'all get the point of the video telling them to lock the doors. I want to just read his response to the internet kicking its back in. Obviously, you have people defending him. Just says Dr. Stephen Newby was actually feeding his flock versus just fleecing his people. Of course, he died. Yeah. Oh, you mean Stephen Darby? Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I want to scroll down. Hold on. Because the jokes came, obviously. I saw this dude right here say, let me read what he said. He said, laugh my ass off. Marvin Sapp ain't never been wrapped too tight. So I'm not surprised that he held that congregation hostage until they gave $40K. Never would have paid it. I'm sorry. I know it's Stephen Newby. Stephen Darby. Yeah. Okay. I got you. On his Facebook page, Marvin said in a lengthy response, some have taken issue with this particular moment when I instructed the ushers rather firmly to close the doors during the offering. To those unfamiliar with the church context or who may not regularly attend worship gatherings, This has been misinterpreted as holding people hostage as well as offensive. That was never my intent. The truth is, when finances are being received in any worship gathering, it is one of the most vulnerable and exposed times for both the finance and security teams. Movement during this sacred exchange can be distracting and at times even risky. What? My directive, is he trying to say that during the time where they're giving this money out, people could be trying to rob people or something? Stealing? My directive was not about control. It was about crafting a safe, focused, and reverent environment for those choosing to give and for those handling the resources. Hold on. All right. So he said he was trying to create a safe environment. Unfortunately, in this social media age, snippets are easily shared without context, and assumptions are quickly made without understanding the full picture. Conferences have budgets, churches have budgets, and people have budgets. As the assigned ministerial gift for the international gathering, one of my responsibilities was to help raise the conference budget. That's not manipulation, that's stewardship. Virginia says, come on, man, Lil Boosie. They always ready for their cover-ups. Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I don't know what he meant by, he was trying to make it safer during that. He scared people gonna bust in and try to, I don't get oh wait, he might be right. It is being recorded live during a live stream online. So during the passing of, people giving out money, you might have to worry about something crazy happening, like people coming into the church while it's live and knowing that money has been passed around and trying to rob them. Man, maybe that's the thing. But I don't think that's really what it was. I think he was trying to make people give money. That's what he was just trying to do. I ain't letting you leave until you give money. Now, then I want to get to this when it comes to the topic of the church. I saw a comment on the internet where someone said the Black Panther Party was smart for not seeking out religious people for membership. Now, the Black Panther Party, I wouldn't say they were against religion, but it didn't support it. It's something called dialectical materialism. Let me show this. This is what the philosophy of the Panthers were. Dialectical materialism is a philosophical framework developed by Karl Marx, as you can see, combining Hegelian dialectics with the materialistic perspective, emphasizing that the material world and its interaction drives societal development and historical change. Obviously, like I said, it comes from Hegelian dialectic, which is basically build by destroying first, which is basically Hegelian dialectic. It's pretty much you build by destroying first. Through the fire, you get purity type of thing. So they were Marxists, the Panthers. They were really anti-religion. Even though they didn't stand on that completely, they just didn't go with their beliefs and their ideology. And so with that, I want to show this clip here. Hold on, y'all. I want to show this clip here. Virginia said it's rumored the Black Panther Party turns out it was too busy getting money from the white women that were doing. Well, the critique, like I keep saying, I said this years ago, as I've gotten older and went back and studied and researched certain things, my opinion has become less of a only support everything they did, because if you speak against the Black Panthers, you're crazy. They were for Black people. How could you dare speak against them? To a more nuanced, there was some stuff going on that we need to really talk about. Them being Marxists explains so much going on during the civil rights movement. I'm gonna say a lot. There were things that happened during the civil rights movement that were false flags. So they had, in this way, this is how you know these people were communists or Marxists, because they used the Hegelian dialectic even during the civil rights movement. They would purposely find a way to emphasize an extreme oppression, whether it be Black people getting beat in the streets, water hoses being dogs, burning something down, and like creating a chaos, because their goal was to quote unquote create equality. So in order to get equality, we have to emphasize the oppression. So we have to almost create extreme levels of oppression sometimes in order for people to go in line with it to understand why we need equality. So it is what it is. Virginia says, I'm with you, Duke, on everything you're currently stating. Questions everything and all people and their true motives. That's what I'm saying. Like, even when I look at people like, as we said before, MLK and all those people, you have to understand that some of them had good intentions with the things they've done, what they were doing. It just, they went a route that maybe wasn't the best. I know said the men were raping black women for practice. They claimed that. No, that's not quite what happened. What up, Ashley? Shalom. I can't let you get that off. That wasn't quite what's happening. Did that happen? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, yes, there are stories of those assaults happening amongst the Black Panthers, but that wasn't the norm and that was not the standard. We ain't got to go that far. But I want to play this video here.
I think the Panthers, very much like we in SNCC, did not build the kind of community base that they had to build. To come into a community, a black community, and to call the neighbor avaricious is just to misunderstand the way black communities work. To denigrate the black minister, who can stand some denigration, but to denigrate him just out of hand, as many of the Panthers did when they'd hit a community firsthand, is to immediately alienate yourself from all of that congregation, from all the people who shop at that barbecue stand, from all of the people whom the Panthers said they wanted to be near.
And this goes back to my point earlier about black people being bad criminals. Unfortunately, because of a lot of the organizations or movements that we start amongst ourselves, it's normally the root of it isn't something that's pure. It's coming from a place where somebody has their own agenda, Jenna said their own motives, and they're using black people to push that. So it all fails at the end of the day. Look at Black Lives Matter. The Panthers end up coming down. Somehow people, the CIA or FBI, whatever, is able to get people inside it because it's not pure. Because if you have a standard of beliefs that are unquestioned and standard and stable, when anybody come to you and try to work with you, you're going to have a way to judge their intent. Because if they're against anything you're saying, then you shouldn't be here then. When you allow anybody to get in if they agree with one thing, or it turns into a situation where you let people in who just lying. So you're bound to fail. Alma says, how many incidents did we need to have reported for us to be concerned about how that behavior was allowed to happen? One is too much. So that you won't get an argument with me about, if it wasn't done that much or whatever. My point is, I don't want to say that it was a standard. It was a norm. It was something that was expected. One is too many. So I'll submit to that point. Virginia says, there's a video of Julian Bond interviewing Angela Davis, and she proudly telling him that she was trained as a Marxist in Europe. That's another thing. Angela Davis, do you understand how I was growing up when I started getting into these movements back in the day with the activists? Angela Davis was painted as a superhero. Like she went to court and defended herself and beat the case. Like, it was like, what are we talking about? This is the greatest ever. Then when you do the smidget of research, it's like, wait, trained Marxists work with this person. The person who was arrested with her didn't beat his case. How he get jammed up? It's like, all right. And then her turn from being this black activist, nationalist, turned into this feminist. It's like, all right. A lot of the things we were taught or told wasn't the full person. This wasn't the full person. So then looking these people up and you look at them totally different, and sometimes it can spoil them for you. Ashley says, facts about what you're saying about purity. Honorable says psychedelics were of a higher priority over the men than whatever initiative they originally had for the Black Panther movement. Like I said, towards the end of the Black Panther movement, at least when it's at its highest, yes, a lot of those dudes that were involved were not really for black people. They were people that were angry at the world. Some of them just wanted to commit violence. Some of them they had other motives to be a part of it. And that's why it ended up failing. Ashley said she was a feminist Marxist, bought and sold. 100% fact. But a lot of people, if you say that, you're disrespecting Angela Davis. Like, it's a big deal. But it's like, if you just read on her, she wasn't who you think she was. Like, she wasn't that person. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to put this on her. But if I'm not mistaken, she was one of the people that signed the letter denouncing the Million Man March. Like, it's crazy. Virginia says, when I learned that communism and Marxism is the underbelly of the civil rights movement, Black Klansman movie made more sense to me. Yeah, it was all. And let me say this. You can make an argument because, and I keep comparing, when you look at the Israeli people, they are able to create the problem to give the solution in order to for the betterment of their people. Covert means is a necessity sometimes. I'm not saying I'm completely against manipulating these other people to benefit your own. But the fact you are manipulating your own people, if you would have told Black people, hey, we're not trying to integrate for relationship means, we're trying to integrate to be a part of the financial system. Instead of pulling their heartstrings and I want the little Black boy and a little white girl. Like, if you wouldn't have did that, if you would have just told people, hey, let's try to get this money, which is Booker T. Washington's point. I'm gonna get to the heart of the Black church really being intellectualism back in the day and not just religious spirituality. If you would have just told people the truth, it could have went totally different how people view the situation. Because you have people like Martin Luther King and those type of people pushing this ideology of integration and assimilation, it led to where we are now, where we almost have to, we go out of our way to be around these people sometimes because we think that's what we're supposed to have been striving for. Honorable says, she LGBTs here, my hair, her legacy is null and void. Ashley said, a lot of people in the Black community were not who you were taught they are. A lot. And it's heartbreaking when you're young and you read this stuff and you come to a different conclusion because the whole world just breaks in front of you where everything was, I won't say everything was a lie, but nothing was the complete truth. Virginia says, looking back, the civil rights movement was less about Black culture freedoms and more about certain Blacks having sexual access to whites, both straight and gay. And that's where I'm going. The academics, the so-called thinkers of our community, during that time, the people who were at the forefront, as you already know, a lot of them were dating outside of their own race or whatever. But that's whatever. But then they would push ideologies telling us they're for Black people, while at the same time trying to convince Black people that we should be looking to hold hands with everybody else. So they're pushing the Black nationalist thinking while also pushing integration and assimilation. It didn't make sense. So you want us to be separate, but also integrated. It didn't make sense. Honorable, I never got the hype about her. She was pushed for her skin tone and sexuality, nothing more. You know what's so funny too? When you realize how this stuff ain't that old, like every day somebody point out, hey, you know, Ruby Ridges is on Instagram. Like Martin Luther King's kids are on Twitter. Malcolm X's daughter is suing right now, I think the FBI or whatever. Like this is not long ago. This stuff is very in your face. But anyway, Honorable Regina, sexual access is still being prioritized today. It is the most dangerous it's being held over this community. I agree. I have to agree. As time goes on, I didn't agree with it years ago, but when you see the same thing, the same trends everywhere you go, it becomes the point where every time somebody says certain things, certain beliefs, I immediately ask, who you dating? It's the first question. The second somebody I don't know is put in my face or goes viral or something, one of the first things I do is who they with? What's the motive? What's the agenda? What's going on? Like I was looking the other day on my feed, and a Black dude, I think he's an NFL player, he proposed to his girlfriend. They're getting married or whatever. And somebody pointed out, damn, why ain't ESPN official account tweet this out? Every time Saquon Barkley or one of these Black dudes are with a non-Black woman, they make sure to post it. But one of these other NFL players post themselves with Black significant other. It's not posted. But anyway, back to what this a point about church. I want to show, because the point being made there was that when Black Panthers decided not to really move with the religious people, it kind of cornered how many people they were always going to have, because you were pushing off a majority of Black Americans, saying that you don't support their religion. And I want to read this from Tim Black, real Tim Black on YouTube and stuff. He's a political commentator. He said, I used to think we needed Black intellectuals to voice our community's challenges. I believe their degrees outweighed my passion. I was mistaken. It's not about academic accolades if you're silenced by the need to appease Democratic colleagues, avoid social backlash, or secure career paths. Better to be short a degree than short a backbone. You can always educate yourself, be true, but true grit, that's earned by standing firm for justice for Black America and saying it with your chest, even if it leaves you with barely enough to catch the bus. Now, what he just said at the end there, even if it leaves you with barely enough to catch the bus, that used to be what we call a revolutionary. We have people who call themselves, who are politicians or have large platforms, who call themselves agitators or revolutionaries, and they're millionaires. I never forget when Taylor, what's her name, Mallory? I forgot how you say her name, Tamara Mallory. I forgot her name. She signed a deal with Cadillac. What are we doing? These are supposed to be your these are your community leaders signing a deal with corporations for money. It says, living here in the East Coast, you can witness the real life dudes filtering their responses to everything through the what I call to be denied sexual access to others filter. It's sick. I can't stand the way he speak. Cringe. Talking about Real 10 Black. But what he's making, the point he's making here is, and I said this, I think it was a few weeks ago, I showed a clip of a dude who was a academic who was on the platforms talking about ADOS FBA, and he was saying how the academics have now made an enemy out of the community because we're not on the same wavelength because they think we're not for them. And it's like, well, if you're an academic and you come and talk to a Black person and you're trying to convince them that everything they think is wrong, when what they think is, what about Black people? So when you talk politics and the first thing this Black person says, all right, how this is going to help Black America? And you're trying to convince them that way of thinking is wrong, then yeah, you probably are alienating yourself from them. See the tone of his voice. So that led this talk here when he said that comment about the intellectuals versus the passion people. And he says, Dr. Carter G. Woodson predicted the current state of Black academia nearly a century ago, and it's frightening how accurate his analysis is. I want to show. So one of the one of the biggest people that come out of the AME Church, the African Methodist Church, AME Church, he became a bishop. The difference between what church was in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s versus now is the people who we consider to be intellectuals and the leaders all came through the church back then. So when you start talking about, regardless of what you think about other things he believed in, W.E.B. Du Bois, he was a guy who was very much in tune with the Black church. As a matter of fact, he had a book called The Soul of Black Folk, where he was talking about the importance of the Negro spirituals and how the Negro spiritual, the spiritual songs are the song of the soul of Black people. And he said the same point I made when I said how if you're not even into religion, when you hear this music or hear these talking points, or hear this music or you hear these sermons, you still can feel it because there's a message. But this story right here was interesting because I found a little factoid about this guy, Henry McNeil Turner. This was the first time I've ever seen this type of story. This is the guy who was one of the people who's a bishop at the AME Church in 1858 in the South, I think South Carolina. Because AME Church or the Black church really came out of the Civil War and Reconstruction. But this right here, have y'all ever seen this type of lineage? He said his paternal grandmother was a white plantation owner, right? And his maternal grandfather, David Greer, was said to have been enslaved in Africa, but freed due to royal Mandingo tribal marks. So when I read this, I haven't read too many stories of I guess he was an African, he was a royal member of a tribe. He got sold into slavery. They freed him. Now this is alleged. They freed him because of they noticed that his royal scarring, and then he ended up he ended up procreating with this white slave owner, this white female slave owner. That was the first time I've seen that type of. Normally, obviously, it's the Caucasian man with a female slave, but that wasn't the case here. Honorable says academics, why are you trying to separate them from the boule? They have always been boule and they haven't changed. Facts. Virginia says eye-opening to realize how Marxism and/or communism and socialism teaches so-called blacks to divide themselves without realizing it. Well, yeah, to the point about William. What up, William? William, you a bed bucking. Hey, she let him out them chains for a reason. But anyway, it's funny his name is Mandingo Tribe too. That's hilarious. But when I was talking earlier about the Marxism of the Black Panthers and a lot of those civil rights people, you know, Marxists typically are against religion. And in every culture in history, there's been some level of spirituality or religion that brought forth the entire dynasty, really. You go Aztecs, Mayans, you go any Arab kingdoms that existed, African kingdoms, all of it. Even the Europeans had some level with the Celts and all that. They all had some level of religion and beliefs. The only time I can think of is when people are against religion is when they are into Marx or they're into communism. And whatever it was called pre-Marx and stuff. But right now, the only country I can think of that's pushing communism and to be against religion is China. China is the only place right now that's a power, world power, that's pushing anti-religion beliefs. I would say AME Church is where the term African American originates from, but y'all want to blame poor Jesse. Well, yeah, and that church came out of the the Civil War, and it was obviously then you go into Jim Crow, which led to a whole battle that this came from, the battle that came when they were trying to bring in the Jim Crow laws and in the what they call it, the separate but equal laws, which is BS. We know that wasn't how that went, but another person, that's what led to that case there. But during that time, you had Booker T. Washington associated with the Black church, who believed in the idea of complete, separate, do it on our own, we don't need nobody help type thing. You know, something else I didn't know is Du Bois actually was a supporter of Marcus Garvey's Back to Africa movement, but then apparently somewhere down the line he fell out with him because Marcus Garvey was hanging out with the Ku Klux Klan. He was doing the thing with the Ku Klux Klan, where because they was in support of Back to Africa. So he was trying to use white people, racism, to pay for the cost for Black people to get to Africa. You know, and then him and Du Bois fell out, and there was a whole thing where Du Bois was writing about him in the Black newspapers, calling him all type of scammers and stuff. And then Marcus Garvey said, "What are you? Are you Irish? Are you Black? What race are you?" He calling him a mutt, basically. Funny enough, Du Bois is the one who ended up in Africa with his wife in Ghana, I think. And Garvey, the one who wanted to go back to Africa, never went to Africa, ended up in Europe, and then he got deported back to Jamaica. Funny how that is, right? The person who was against it ended up, not against it, but the person who ended up falling out will end up going to Africa and staying there, getting a new name, becoming a real recognized figure there. And the so-called the Garvey person, and didn't even go back on the whole continent. He didn't ever step foot on the continent. Virginia says, wonder if Duke, this story is where the movie Mandingo come from. Well, Mandingo, I don't know. But I remember Mandingo, I told you about the comment section, the crazy stuff people were saying in the comment section on the YouTube video of that movie. Negroes were saying that was a love story. It was crazy. Honorable says, if I recall, at some point, Africans were moving here around that time. A small amount during the 1800s. Really, yeah, late 1800s, you started seeing more Caribbean Africans come here a little bit in spots. Which is funny because back then they were recognized as separate. Black Americans, a particular group of black people always get compared to Ethiopians versus sub-Saharan Africans. It's probably because of what they deem a skin tone difference. Ain't nothing Poe about Jesse. He always been calculating. He was pushing that term at a black version of Woodstock that was occurring simultaneously, even if he didn't author it. Williams said Garvey was rubbing elbows with those white eugenicists. I don't trust dude. Well, I can't completely put that on Garvey because Du Bois and them they were kind of eugenicists as well. They believed that the poor black people should not procreate. And we heard that thinking about a lot of people, and people have their opinion. I asked that question a long time ago. Would you rather have 100 million quote unquote normal black people, or would you rather have 20, 30 million of the quote unquote special black people? Would you rather have the black people that's considered part of the talented tent, the people who, college educated, yada, yada, yada? Or would you rather have the everyday working class black American? Would you rather have 100 million of them? And that's a eugenicist question, because some people would rather have that 30 million. So Williams says, true, them too, the talented tent doctrine. Eugenicists of Du Bois and other Negro preachers were providing consultation and funding for Margaret Sanger. Yeah. And they finally, the Parenthood a couple years ago finally denounced Margaret Sanger, I'm sorry. Not truly, but they called themselves not trying to associate with her publicly. But it's like she said what she said. We killing these black babies. And y'all still telling people, it's not an accident that most of y'all brick and mortar buildings are in black neighborhoods or somewhere near them. Close proximity. Anyway, let's move on. Virginia says, so now the Tuskegee experiment was a black nurse administering the drugs is questionable. That story was shocking too. The woman who allegedly, the woman you're talking about, who was actually who basically was not telling them what really was going on. Then I found out that the first person to try to kill Martin Luther King was a black woman. Then you find out about MK Ultra and stuff, and it's like, oh, you find out about the experimentations that was going on. It ain't just the Tuskegee experiment; it's plenty of others that was happening. So, that was a weird time, because that was around the time where race science was just starting to be called out in the early 1900s. They still was very much into that race science stuff, the old IQ thing and the skull shape determines your humanity and stuff. So, not surprised. Yeah, the church was where the intellectuals were. When you talk about Booker T, Du Bois, thinkers back, they were all ingrained in the black church. So to say that you're against the church is to say you're against some of the leaders, or at least the thinkers back then. So it can't all be spirituality and believe and don't research. Because a great pastor is normally, or should be an intellect. They should have a brain to know how to discern and teach. You can't teach something you don't understand. And there's no way, if you have to have a high level of comprehension to understand the Bible at times, you have to be able to have high comprehension. If you don't, you're gonna be in the woods. Adam says, what type of black woman?